Okay. Hello. Yes. My name is Harald Cederlund. I'm with the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and I work here at the Biocenter. And I've been working with weed control on railways for a very long time. I did my PhD in 2006 on the microbiology of railway tracks. And it was sort of focused on how microorganisms degrade herbicides in railway ballast. And after that, I sort of inherited the test program that was running in Sweden to test herbicides for railway use, to assess if they are effective and if they are environmentally sustainable. Do they degrade and do they leach, etc. This was run for about 10 years or so, and then it has been organized differently. I have become now an expert advisor for the National Transport Administration, they are called nowadays. And I'm also involved in research projects looking into alternative methods for weed control. And I will reflect a little bit on my experiences during this time. We have relied on herbicides on Swedish railways for a very long time. We started actually with these inorganic salts that maybe are coming back, we will see. But we went on to the organic chemicals, which were then perceived to be more sustainable and environmentally friendly and so on, and less dangerous. Then we moved on to mainly diarone, and then we have moved into the sort of glyphosate era, you can say. And if you look at the statistics of what we have used, we can see a very clear trend that the herbicide use is going down and down. We have these different eras. In the beginning, we used many different products. Then there were some health concerns with railway workers. They didn't feel so well when they were spraying all these products. So then we quit for a while, and then we stuck with only diarone, which was perceived as the best option. And then we found some environmental problems with this diarone. It was very persistent, which it's supposed to be, and it caused a lot of pine trees to die along the railways and so on. So then we have moved over to the glyphosate era. And you can see all this blue here, it's all different glyphosate products. There is a little bit of red there that you may not be able to see. That's imazapyr that we used for a few years. But otherwise, we have been sticking to glyphosate for a very long time. And the question is, will this be the non-chemical era coming here? Actually, since I work on degradation of herbicides, this looks a little bit like a degradation curve to me. So I couldn't resist plotting this data. And the half-life is around 10 years for herbicide use on Swedish railways. I did use a model where it's stabilizing at around 2.8 metric tons per year. But so maybe it will stabilize at this level. I don't know. What are the reasons for this decline? Well, we have less railway actually than we had in the 1950s. Some of the railway is constructed in different ways. It's covered in more stones, so we have less weeds on those types of railways. We use products with the lower application rates. We don't have any herbicide for brush control on the side of the railway anymore. We only use now glyphosate, which is post-emergent type. So there's no point in applying it beforehand. You can only apply it to the weeds. And this has been emphasized by the introduction of weed detection systems, which has reduced the use further. And then we have sort of more and more no spray zones on the railway that are spreading out. Has this caused there to be more weeds? I would say probably we have many more weeds now on the railways than we had in the 1970s, 1960s. This is an anecdotal evidence of a rail yard, pictures taken at the same spot. We don't have a lot of quantitative data, obviously, from these old days of how many weeds there were. So it's difficult to say, but we probably have a lot more weeds now, at least on certain railways. Yeah, this is sort of the specification that was in the contract I had when I was responsible for this test program. We should have some sort of dream product which should be effective against all weeds at a low application rate and be both post-emergent and pre-emergent in action, and not have any problems, not cause any problems to the environment or health or the railway infrastructure. And this is maybe not possible to achieve all these aims at the same time. Especially it's difficult to have a long-lasting action and a short persistence, for example. So in this test program that we ran up until 2015, we had a lot of field experiments. I counted 19 field experiments, and we looked at 20 different herbicides and methods of various kinds that we evaluated. We had many of these substances that we mentioned here today. We also looked at actually pelargonic acid quite early and acetic acid, and we evaluated hot foam. And I will not talk so much about the chemicals here today. I will focus more on the alternatives. So acetic acid is something we tested quite early, and that actually works very well with the ridiculously high application rates that we tested. It is about as effective as glyphosate. And if you apply it twice in a season, it's extremely effective. And it can kill even pine trees and spruce trees and stuff that we have problems with in Sweden. Of course, it smells very badly, and it causes corrosion, which is, this is a rail which I photographed in the morning after I applied it in the evening, and it had already everything corroded very rapidly. And we were planning large-scale tests of this in Sweden, but this never came to be. There was too many worries about how this might affect some signaling systems or attachments between rails and sleepers and so on. Even though there was some special corrosion studies done, they indicated that it would probably be fine, but in the end, there was no large-scale test done. I didn't put anything on pelargonic acid, but I tested that also very early in an experiment. And in that experiment, I couldn't distinguish the effect from the control treatment. So we didn't proceed with that. Then later it has popped up again and become more popular. And maybe I did something wrong, I don't know. Hot foam is something that we have looked at. And this has been done by a commercial applicator. And it uses a lot of water, obviously. If you look at it on a per hectare scale, of course, if you don't have weeds everywhere, you will not apply it everywhere, and then the consumption will go down. This is something that the foam insulates the soil a bit, so it keeps the temperature up a bit longer compared to only hot water, which means that you get a better energy transfer. And the foam disappears within 30 minutes or so, at least visually. And it can actually have a reasonably good effect, especially if you apply it more than once in a season. This plot that I shows you the results the year after we did the treatments. So this is the remaining effects of the weed control. This shows you the weed coverages here. So yeah, it's reasonably good, I would say, compared to glyphosate as well. It doesn't have a very long residual effect. So it would work, but only small scale because of the way it's applied and the large quantities of water that we use. After 2015, we have not had this testing program. Instead, we have had various research programs. And it has also been very clear from the Transport Administration that their aim is to basically replace all chemicals with non-chemical methods. So the research has been focused on looking into the alternatives almost completely. Also, we're doing a lot of risk assessments, environmental monitoring, stuff like that, with the existing use of glyphosate. What should I say more? Yeah, basically they have announced that they have forbidden all chemical herbicides already, with the exception of use against weeds on railways and invasive species, certain invasive species. So, but the official aim is that they should be phased out. And I will give you some examples of some of the research stuff that we have been doing for the last few years, which have been a little bit all over the place, as you will see. These are some hot water applications that we have been looking into. This guy here, he has he takes care of the rail yard in the city of Östersund, which is a whole groundwater protection area, the whole rail yard. So you cannot apply any herbicides. And he does this with hot water and mechanical treatments in some sort of a combination that is a little bit difficult to decipher. We tried to study this on site, but we had a bit of a problem to get a controlled experiment going, I have to admit. So conclusions are, yeah, he takes care of this railway, and that's about as much as he can handle, probably. If it works very well, it's still very green, I can say it like that. But they say that it's better than it was before. We have been using some hot water against giant hogweed recently. We did an experiment last year. It didn't work very well. The idea was to have some sort of large-scale application instead of, you can inject a spear into the tap root of the hogweed and kill it with hot water, but it's very time-consuming and you cannot treat it all. This is not very promising, I would say. We have been trying recently some steaming experiments as well. This is some home-built contraption that one of my colleagues has been building and trying out first on a steam train. Of course, when we wanted to try it, we had a steam generator, and the steam generator couldn't generate enough steam to kill any weeds. They were kind of washed a little bit, maybe, with hot water, but it didn't kill any weeds. So we haven't really been trying this out in reality yet, I would say. Maybe we will do something later when we get better steam generator. This is a crazy experiment we did last year. This is a snow blowing equipment. And this is the idea is that you should have a mechanical treatment first, and then you should suck up the weeds and collect them. Of course, we haven't gotten to that stage where we collect them yet. We're just blowing them out the side in a very dangerous way. So I should have had the filmed footage here. I can show you later on my phone. But it's kind of noisy and it's kind of dangerous. And it's throwing God knows what out very far to the side. And I think that there is a certain merit to the original idea of collecting, if you have a mechanical weed control, to collect the material and remove it from the track. That seems reasonable. But if you just cut it down, it remains in place, and then you promote more weed growth, etc. So concept-wise, it's not that stupid. This application doesn't work. We have been trying a remote-controlled rotary tiller to kill hogweeds again, an invasive species. The idea being to treat large areas of hogweed that we have. And it does have some effect. We can see that this is the plot shows you the efficacy after 2 years of consecutive treatments, 1, 2, or 3 mowings per year. And we are reducing the number of plants in the beginning of the season. So maybe after more years, it will go down to 0. I don't know. Now, when we came back in June this year, even in the treatment where we had mowed it at that time 7 times, the hogweeds were still this tall and were flowering. So we need more time for this to be effective, if it will be effective at all. We have tried various types of ballast plowing and scraping experiments. We established 2 field experiments in 2021. This is a very old ballast plow that we have been trying. Then we have been scraping, so we have had different zones of plowing and scraping outside the scraping. Then we have sowed various grasses into the outer zones to prevent re-establishment of weeds, etc. And one experiment was erased because they decided to put down a cable, so that we couldn't do anything with. The other one showed that, yeah, it has some residual efficacy. The best way was to scrape and plow. With the planting of new vegetation, I don't know if that's, yeah, if we could evaluate that properly even. But I think that, yeah, if you scrape off everything, you will have a certain residual efficacy. Of course, you may also collect piles of soil that you need to take care of, which might be a problem. Now we are establishing new mechanical weeders. We have established 1 field experiment last year. We haven't looked at the results yet. We hope to use the herbicide spraying train to measure the weed coverages in our different plots to get a very good answer of has this had an effect or not. Basically, we have taken something that comes from agriculture where you sort of pull out the weeds. We have another design as well that we tried in some of the plots, but I'm not showing that. As I say, I can't say if this is effective or not. I can say that we are only taking care of a very small section with the current design. So we would like to go further out, and obviously we don't treat the middle of the track. So then you need to combine it with some other treatment in the middle of the track. It's possible that if we are mixing the soil, we are promoting new weeds to start growing as well. We will see when we look at the results. As I said, we have had a lot of focus on assessing the risks. Yeah, I published a paper on environmental monitoring of groundwater. And I can say to you, Uri, that at least in Sweden, we did not have very high concentrations of glyphosate in the groundwater and not in the railway track either. These assessments generally show that things are rather okay, actually. We have also done a lot of wind drift trials, and I'm working on a paper on that as well, which I will publish sometime, hopefully in the near future. And it also shows that, yeah, it can have some impact on vegetation very close to the sprayed area, but it's not a huge concern for, I don't know, surface waters, etc. But despite the fact that these risk assessments show that the risks are not so high, the attitude seems to be that it's more and more risky. And I think this has to do with the fact that if you talk about risks, people start thinking about risks. So they think about them more and more. And this has had a consequence that the attitude is more and more risk averse. And one consequence of this is that the no spray zones on Swedish railways have been increasing and increasing. This map shows you the situation a few years back. I just took an example here, the town of Nässjö. I don't know if you can see these blue blotches here. They are no spray zones where the railway is close to some surface water. But then they realized that that might be a problem with ditches that are close to the railway track. So they added more colored blotches in orange here for ditches too close to the track. And then they discovered that there was a map layer of properties that had their own water, which means that they might have a well close to the railway. They probably don't have a well exactly next to the railway, but they might have a well next to the railway. So then they instigated no spray zones there. I will show you another map example. This is just another one. The same thing, shows you the situation before, and we have the ditches, and we have the properties with wells. And at this point, you wonder, is there any point in spraying the bits that are in between? If it's 80% no spray zones, why do we bother treating the rest? And of course, it shows you that there's a huge demand for non-chemical methods if this is the only thing that is allowed here. And still, we are not using any non-chemical methods. I showed you before that this hot water, for example, with the foam, it actually works. It's not good for large areas, but it actually works. I think that one reason is, of course, that there are huge logistical challenges. You use a lot of water, this is slow application speed, etc. Another is that the Transport Administration have not actively, despite their official stance that they want to replace all the herbicides, they have not tried to procure alternative methods for the railway. And I think that one reason for this is that weed control has been put out and put as a national project. It's not possible for anybody to come and answer a call. Yes, I will treat all the railway network with hot foam. It doesn't work because you cannot do it. It's not fast enough. So I think that you have to start small scale. You have to promote these alternative methods to maybe start like they did in Östersund, which is the only example I've seen where, and I don't know why it's organized like that there, but maybe start to procure weed control for a few rail yards with alternative methods so that companies can develop methods, become better at it. Then you get a better idea of what you can actually do with alternative methods. I also think that it's very unlikely that they will actually phase out herbicides. And I think that this is something that the Transport Administration need to accept and also start managing that and actually see that maybe we have to look at all these no spray zones. We can't treat them in any way non-chemically, maybe we have to treat them chemically somehow. We should still have the focus to replace the chemicals, but we have to work actively to maybe also try other chemicals than just glyphosate, which is not sustainable in the long run. I also think that there's a tremendous potential in these new weed detection and recognition systems. If we can manage all the data that is recorded now, this is maybe a bit behind beside the point, but I think that if you know better where and how the weeds grow and which weeds grow where, and how they respond to different treatments on the large scale, you can develop a better strategy. So, with that, I want to thank at least my most recent partners in crime, Fredrik Fogelberg and Kristina Mjöfors from RISE, the Research Institutes of Sweden. They are also collaborating with me on some of these crazy non-chemical methods. And I also want to thank the Transport Administration, of course, for funding and helping me with a lot of these experiments. So, questions?